Hello, welcome to another one of my videos where we look at various ways to improve movement really, whether your goal is to get out of pain or just to be stronger and fitter. You really have to move well, and one of the biggest problems or areas that I have really a lot of people struggle with is around the hips, with glute control, pelvic control, either giving them back pain or knee pain, hip pain, and also with the feet. They're all really linked together. So obviously some of the best exercises are single leg exercises, but they can be very difficult to do. In this video I'm going to show you like one variation of a single leg exercise. It's actually quite difficult, but it's also very effective, and I'll show you a way to make it simpler, and then also a way to make it progress it, make it more challenging to get better results. So firstly, let's look at the original exercise. So in its essence here is basically a single leg deadlift. Now also very important, it actually works best if you don't have shoes on, because often we find foot stability is a big problem with the single leg stance, and you really want to eliminate the shoes assisting you and make the muscles of the feet and also the ankle, if that's a stiffness there, really learn how to work with the system. No matter what I do in this movement, I've got to try to keep this imaginary line between my ankle, my knee and my hip all in a straight line. All right, so what you don't want to see at any point is this sort of horrible alignment, or obviously my body falling out, which we call shoulder sway. So I've got to have really good core control and trunk control, and later on I'll sort of show you what it looks like when it goes wrong. But just bear in mind, no matter what we do here, we're looking for that. All right. So, all right. Now, this is nothing new. We've ever seen this before, but where it gets a little bit more challenging is when you try to open the trunk up deliberately. And when I get into this position here, where I'm really abducting the hip here and moving the trunk. So what happens is that as I'm trying to rotate around this way, and you notice that my eyes have come off, so I'm not looking at my foot here anymore. This is where I'm really using a lot of proprioception. So this is a very underrated part of training, is the proprioceptive ability. So my eyesight is not like on a fixed point, it's actually moving. Now as my pelvis has rotated outwards to try and get this leg out as such, the opposing leg naturally fights against it to provide my stability. So this is where it's quite a unique exercise, because the key to this is really the glute on this leg. VMO is working quite hard, but as is the foot and the ankle, and they're really opposing this rotational pull, I suppose you could say, where it's almost really going to drag me across that way and end up having me to put my foot down. All right, so this is quite a really effective way in building strength in that single leg stance and opening you up into that position. Now you also have a bit of a hip mobility thing going on that leg that's in the air. So you can actually start to work on that at the same time. So I'll show you another version again. So I bring my leg into full flexion. I go into like a single leg Romanian deadlift. So I'm really bending at my hips here. I'm not using my knee too much. I'm predominantly using my hip. And you can see there I've got that perfect alignment that we spoke about at the beginning. All right, and then as I try to open up, my job is to maintain that alignment and get my eyes off looking in front of me, so building that proprioceptive system, and then opening right out. It's almost like I'm about to do a karate kick or something, And you can see like how much my body is really fighting with this, and how well it has to really work together just to maintain this perfect alignment here. Right, so it can be a very useful exercise. Anyone with knee pain or hip pain especially, but even with plantar fasciitis and shin splints and those various foot-related problems. Now, biggest problem with this is obviously stability and balance. A lot of people just really can't hold that position for even 1 rep, let alone 5 or 6 or 10 reps even. So sometimes you might have to regress it. So this is where I might regress the movement, and I'll hold on to some sort of fixed point. So I could use in this case a cable machine, but I could use a barbell up on the rack. I could even use my hands on the wall, to be honest. So my first thing that I've got to do here is learn to stick my butt back. All right, so I'm really getting into this extended position through my hip, trying to minimize as much knee movement as possible. I've got a little bit forward, but it's not much. All right, so that's the first thing. Now, as I get into that extended position, then I just really rotate myself around. And you can see I want to try and rotate so far that I almost get like a full 90-degree opening point here. All right, I'll play that again for you. So you'll see me do a couple of reps of these. And I'll come up to straight each time just to get out of it. So by holding on to this, it really eliminates the foot stability as a factor here. And you see how far my leg has to kick back behind me. A lot of people like keep that knee down here, which really just jams them up in the hip here in the TFL area, and they get really caught and stuck there. So make sure that you have your leg right out. All right, so it's like a straight line. If you don't know if you are, probably best to have someone to help you, give you a bit of feedback on that. And then when you open up, you can see how I've got a 90-degree angle at my hip and knee there. And then this leg, see how the foot has to keep pointing forward. You must keep that fully planted, and this way probably the only cue here that I'll give to you is keep the big toe down. You don't want that big toe to lift off, all right? So holding onto a fixed point allows you to feel what the movement that you're aiming to do should feel like how it glides through the hip as I sit back, how that leg pushes right back into extension, and then it just opens itself right out, and then I rotate around it. All right, and you can feel that stance leg, how it's really firmly planted. All right, so that's how I would regress the movement. Now, if I feel like I've got control over it without having to hold on to anything, like I did at the beginning, it's where I might bring in the extra stability challenge, where I can use some resistance to try and basically feed the mistake. All right, so we're going to try and encourage the things to go wrong with this resistance band. So there's a couple of ways I might do this. The first way I might approach the hip being the problem. So I'll place the band above the knee, so you can see how it's just slightly above the knee, and I'll have it pulling inwards. So with the hip, because basically when it goes wrong, if my glutes and that fail, you'll see that everything drift in and get this horrible alignment. All right, so I'll have that band trying to make me do that now, and my body can sense that's going on, so it has to make the adjustment of correcting it, and the only way I can do that is by activating the glutes correctly. My foot has to remain as stable as possible. It can't react to this. If it reacts to this, it'll overcorrect it. And you'll see the extra challenge reduces a bit of my range, and because I'm really fighting with it, you can see that knee floating around everywhere as I'm trying to do it. And then the more reps I do, that you start to get a feel of what you're meant to do, and obviously fatigue kicks in, so you might have to have a rest and change sides. All right, so that's how I might approach it for the hip side of things, but I can also approach it from coming under the hip and really targeting the knee. All right, so to show you what that looks like, I've got to do, I'm going to have to change legs here, because what I'm going to do is pull the tibia externally. So if I was pulling the femur internally, I'm going to pull the tibia externally. Now, where I place this band, I place it just under the knee. All right, so this is where it's a little bit easier. It actually, in some ways, do feel a little bit more stable. All right, so you just got to find the right amount of tension that you want on there. If you've got too much, you might never be able to get any out. If you haven't got enough, there's no extra challenge on it. All right, so then you've got to work into your range again. So you can see this time I'm doing it on a different leg, and you'll be able to compare the difference between the right and left and see if there's a weaker side. And for me, this is definitely my weaker side. I definitely feel way more unstable. All right, so with the band, with it placing high up near my knee there, all I need, if I wanted to make this more difficult, all I need to do is just move that band a little bit closer down, so into the middle of my calf, which will be then it really attacking my ankle and my foot more so than the hip, like I did with the first one. All right, so you see here I'll place it a little bit lower down. Now it's a little bit more challenging because my foot is going to be, if it's prone to really messing this up, it's going to be even harder now. All right, so this is where the people who have the feet-related issues that are stemming into the knee or even the hip itself, this might be a more effective way than pulling the femur. And for me, I find this a lot more challenging. And you can see how I have to really go carefully on this, and my body's just really fighting with it to try and maintain that stability with the foot. All right, and that's how I approach these different ways of using the band to make a progression as such. All right, so then there's one more progression that I might do. So once I've moved beyond these and I've got the hang of these and I've done 3 sets or 4 sets of like maybe 6 reps, you're unlikely to get 12. You really want to work quite slowly. If you can get to that point where you've got control of that and you really think, yeah, I've got it nailed, that's when you might go back to this progression. Now this time I've got it slightly under the knee pulling inwards. This actually is a little bit easier by doing it that way, but this is just to give you an example of how you can really change this. So now I'm going to rotate that hip again, but this time I'm going to try and step over the band. All right, and then I'm not going to put that foot down, and then I'm going to step backwards and over and then bend back into the deadlift again. So really I never actually get an attempt to stand up completely. I'm sort of stuck in this bent over deadlift position while my leg in the air requires immense amount of mobility. You see I lose it here and my body just sort of getting fatigued and tired, and I don't quite have that mobility on that left hip. All right, so that's an example of how I could progress that and really using a prolonged muscle tension activity to drive the strength gain a little bit more greater. So I don't really want to add load to this. I just maybe use time and tempo changes the effectiveness. All right, so this is a really awesome exercise. Anyone struggling with hip pain or foot pain, like I said before, and obviously knee pain, this is a great exercise that really helps you to maintain that or restore that lost hip, lower limb alignment. So for those who struggle with all the single leg things, this could be a real game changer for you. If you struggle with glute activation, this could be a game changer for you. And like I said, you might have used that regression for a while and then come back and slowly work your way forward. All right, so anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that video. It gives you a few extra ideas how you can incorporate that into your program, and we'll show you a few other variations of these things hopefully over the coming weeks. All right, see you again soon.